Good morning. Till now we've looked at basically why are dates important to history. We have looked at which dates are important, and we've looked at the fact that when we change the topic or the issue that we are studying in history, the dates that we consider important also change, right? So now we're going to move to the next part of the chapter that deals with something that we call periodization, right? Now, what is periodization, why do we do it, is what we'll try and understand next. Now, if you look at what we mean by a period, right? So a period is any length of time. Like we have periods in class, so each period is 40 minutes, so that's one period of time for school. Now, what is periodization? Periodization is when we divide history into specific well-defined periods, right? Now, why are we dividing history into these well-defined specific periods? Because think about it. If I tell you that you have to study history, but which history do you have to study? Do you have to study all of history? No, that's far too much for anybody to really study. So we want to create something that we can focus on, है ना? We want to create classifications, or we want to create small compartments that we can focus on and study only that. So to make our study easier, to make our understanding of history simpler, what do? We periodize. And when we periodize, what are we trying to do? We are particularly trying to characterize the past. Now, what do we mean by characterize the past? Everything, any item, any object, any plant, any tree, any person has certain unique features that they have, right? Now, those certain unique features are unique to whatever is that particular item or that thing. It could be, for example, a tree, right? So what type of climate does it grow in? What type of soil it needs? What type of leaves does it have? Does it have any fruit or not? So each tree like that is different. Similarly, each period in history will have some unique characteristics. Now, what type of characteristics are they? So they could be any of these. These are just some options. So they could be relating to politics, they could be relating to the economy, they could be relating to society or religion or any other thing, right? Now, what do we mean? Just for example's sake, let us say I want to divide or I want to periodize Indian history based on the politics of the periods. Okay? So one way of doing it, let's say I can say that I will divide Indian history into two periods. One period where there was no democracy and one period where there was democracy. So what can I say? The period before 1947 was the period without any democracy. Period after 1947 was with democracy. And I can similarly change my characteristic that I'm looking at if I'm looking at economy. So I can maybe say period when people in India only farmed, or a time when people began to start working in factories as well apart from farming. So now I have divided history into these 2 or 3 periods. And simply we are doing it so that we can make our own study of history simpler. Now, one person who gave us a periodization of Indian history, one of the first periodizations, was a man called James Mill. Now, who is James Mill? So if you look in your textbook on page number 3, right, you will find James Mill there. And who is James Mill? James Mill was a Scottish economist. Scottish as in from Scotland, it's a country. Economist, someone who studies the economy, and he was a political philosopher. So he wrote and thought about politics. And he writes a book, it's called A History of British India. And this book is in 3 volumes, right? So basically he divides Indian history into 3 periods and writes it in 3 different books or 3 different volumes. But before we look at how he periodizes history, let us understand what he thought about India, what he thought about Indian culture, society in general. Okay, now, what is he saying? When James Mill came to India, the first thing he did was he did a comparison between Europe, which is where he came from, the continent Europe, and Asia, right? And he said that European civilization Now, what do we mean by civilization? I already gave you the meaning also. Civilization is basically how people lived, how is the society ordered, how is the society structured, what type of government is there, are people living with each other peacefully, all of those things, right? So that is what makes a civilization. Now he is drawing a comparison, and he's saying that what he sees in India, he's comparing to what he has experienced in Europe, and he's basically saying that Europe is better than Asia or India. And why is he saying that? He's saying that before the British, right, when India had no context of Europe, India was ruled by despots. I already also gave you the meaning of despots, right? A despot is someone who rules in a cruel or unfair manner, जो किसी की नहीं सुनता, लोगों की भलाई के बारे में नहीं सोचता, right? And he's saying whether they were Hindu or they were Muslims, they were all despots, okay? Apart from that, he's saying that there was a lot of religious intolerance. What does intolerance mean? Tolerate करना मतलब सहन करना. So intolerance is the opposite, ना सहन कर पाना. And what क्या नहीं सहन कर रहे? He's saying different religions could not tolerate each other, could not live with each other. There were caste taboos. So as I already told you, what is a taboo? Something that society does not accept. So for example, society did not accept that the lower caste people that the lower caste people are allowed to drink water from the same well or use the same public facilities as everyone else. And there were a lot of superstition. Superstition is andhvishwas, okay? And he's saying that because of all of these reasons, European civilization was better than Asian civilization. And if India wanted to be civilized, India would have to start following, or Indians would have to stop following European manners, laws and institutions. And his basic argument is that before, yani ki prior means before the British period, India had a period of darkness, andhakar. And it is only after the British came that India had a period of civilization and progress. Progress is usually a good thing, right? But now I want you to think and tell me. You've studied Indian history in 6th and 7th, right? You've studied a lot of different cultures, different kings and queens and different societies in India. Do you think what you've studied showed that India was full of a period of darkness? Think about it. Think back to what you've studied in the past 2 years and tell me whether James Mill, whatever he believed about Indian history, was it correct or was it wrong? And while you're thinking that, I want everyone to just read this page, how do we periodize, right? So all of this, and then turn the page and read this, okay? So we'll just take a pause. Everyone should read these passages till here. Okay. Now, I hope everyone's read that portion. Now, to understand how James Mill divided or periodized history, we'll use the help of a timeline. Now, what is a timeline? It's a visual representation of a chronological sequence of events along a drawn line, right? So, from the starting, then to the end, and with different periods in between, we will put history on a straight line so that we can go from a chronological sequence from earlier to latest, okay? Now, when we look at James Mill's periodization, what do we see? We see that he divides Indian history into 3 periods. One, you have the Hindu period, then you have the Muslim period, and then you have the British period. Now, on the face of it, first glance, पहली बार आप इसको देखोगे आपको क्या लगेगा कि ये religion के basis पे differentiate किया है, हिंदू, मुस्लिम एंड ब्रिटिश. बट थोड़ा सा और इसको सोचो, out of all of these, do you think British is a religion? Hindu is a religion, yes. Muslim is a religion, yes. और मतलब Hinduism and Islam are religions. Is British a religion? नहीं ना. British is a nationality. अगर हम यहाँ कहते कि इनका रिलीजन क्या हुआ, so we would say that their religion is Christianity. So this is not a religion. But what is he based this division on? He has, according to James Mill's writing, he has divided it on the basis of who the rulers were, who the kings were. So you have Hindu kings, you have Muslim rulers or Hindu rulers, and then you have the British who were ruling India. Now, what is the problem with this periodization? You think again about what history you have read about earlier, and you tell me. Last year you did Mughal history, right? So when we look at this period, so according to James Mill, everyone during this period, all rulers were Muslim. But is that true? Were there no other rulers, non-Muslim rulers at this point of time over there? You also know that there were Marathas, there were Rajputs, both who were not Muslim. So then how, on what basis can James Mill make this periodization? Clearly he is not entirely correct. So what are therefore then some of the drawbacks or problems with this periodization? So first, so we've said it is based on the religion of the rulers. Now, just because the period or just because the king was a Muslim, does that mean that all the people living under that king were also Muslim? No. Right? Across the entire area of India, there would probably be no case where there was one ruler who belonged to a particular religion and all the people who lived under him also followed the same religion. And apart from this, what it tells us. So for example, when we looked at this, that initially people who used to write history, they focused only on various governor generals, right? We did this topic. James Mill is making the same mistake. He is again focusing only on the rulers. He is not focusing at all on the lives of the common people. He is only looking at the religion of the rulers. So therefore we are saying that this James Mill's periodization is not correct, right? Now if this is not correct, then what is correct? So look at this periodization that we now have, that most people use. Now here we can see history has been divided into ancient, medieval and modern. So ancient is प्राचीन, है ना, जो बहुत पहले था. Medieval is somewhere in the middle. Modern is what is the most recent history that we study. And I want everybody to look at this slide and tell me if you can recognize what this is and what this is and what this is. What are these three images representing to you? I'm going to pause, think about it and tell me what period or which or where would you have seen something like that? What is this a symbol of? And who are these people and what are they doing? Now, if we look at this history, even there is one small problem here as well in this type of periodization. And the problem here is that most historians are arguing that this entire system or this entire classification or periodization has been borrowed from the West. Now, what do we mean by the West? West here basically means whether it is Europe or whether it is America, basically whatever is to the west of India. And what is the problem, or why can't we use the exact same formula of ancient, medieval, modern that is used in the West and apply it to India? Because if you look at India, or if you first look at the history that was divided on the basis of in the West, what are they saying? They describe the modern history as a period where you had science. Science is, I hope everyone understands what science is, reason or logic. Democracy. Democracy is a form of government, right, where people who can choose who is their government. Liberty or freedom and equality. And according to the West, all of this was available in the modern period, and in the medieval period none of this existed, right? So you did not have in Europe or in the West during their medieval period, they didn't have any of these things, is what this is the classification that they're making. So according to them, the unique characteristic of the modern period is that it has all of this, and the unique characteristic of the medieval period is that it does not have any of this. But now tell me, if you look at Indian history, can you say that the modern period, can you say, or when you look at history, I'm sure you know a little bit about it, and as you look this year in history as well, you will also see that actually in India, during what the West is calling the modern period, we did not have any democracy, we did not have liberty, and we did not have equality. And why is that? Why did we not have any of this? Because we were under the control of the British. And that is why many historians are saying what? That instead of calling it a modern period, we should call it a colonial period. So what does that mean? What does it mean to be colonial? Okay. So before we look into what is colonial and what does it mean, I want all of you to read these 2 paragraphs or these 3 paragraphs here. Just read this, think about it a little. Right. Now, what do we mean by colonial? Now, if you look at your textbook, they've also asked the same question. What is colonial? Right? So, I want everybody to look at this map. Right? It's not very clear, unfortunately. But if you look at this map, you'll see one thing. That this is a map of the territories under the British Empire. Okay, areas that were controlled by the British. Now if you see this in red here, this area, right? It's an old map, very old map, and parts of this region here. Now all of these, this is Europe, or this is UK, this is Britain, and all of these areas were under the control of the British. Okay? Now what does it have to do with being colonial, or what does it have to do with colonialism? We are saying colonialism is when a powerful country, so in this case Europe or Britain is the powerful country, controls another country or a group of countries. So it's controlling this region in North America, this region in Africa, India, Australia. And why is it concerned, or why does it want to control another territory? To extract resources and become richer. ठीक है, उनको पैसे कमाने, तो वो इन एरियाज में जाते हैं, इन एरियाज को subjugate करते हैं. What does subjugate mean? I also give you the definition of subjugate. Subjugation means to bring somebody under your control, usually by force, right? So subjugation, through subjugation, now it is not just bringing them under your control. A part of colonialism also is that when any area is under the subjugation, so for example हम कह रहे हैं India was subjugated by the British. Because of that subjugation, क्योंकि हम ब्रिटिशर्स के कंट्रोल में थे, it led to changes in politics, economy, society and culture in India. Because of the impact of British rule, there were changes we saw in Indian politics, Indian economy, Indian society and Indian culture. Now, you will learn about this year. You will learn about the changes that took place in all of these spheres this year, right? And therefore, what we can say also, that you are studying colonial history this year. Okay? I hope it's clear what is colonialism and what is colonial. Okay? I want everybody to go ahead and read this portion here and just try and see if you've understood. If you've not understood, you can ask me in the next class when I'm there. Okay? Okay, great. So I hope this much is clear. We'll carry on with the next tomorrow, and I request the teacher in class to please play the extra marks video that I have indicated. Thank you.